Good news to share from the world of the internet. It seems more and more people are showing interest in the Catholic faith. Google recently reported a 373% increase in the search of how to become Catholic. Our own Mark Irons recently discussed the inspiring trend with a Dominican friar and a podcast host.
Joining us now is Father Patrick Mary Briscoe, Dominican friar and editor of our Sunday Visitor. Father Briscoe, thank you for joining us.
My joy. Thanks for having me on.
Well, what's behind this? Why are so many people interested in becoming Catholic?
Well, ultimately, I think it would be a mistake to attribute it to anything other than the Holy Spirit. Of course, the Lord is behind all of this, and he continues to call many souls to himself. But once we acknowledge the power of divine grace, which of course orders and governs all things, then I think there are many things we could propose. And I think the first and most important is a resurgence, a growth in interest in religion among young people.
Absolutely. And the spike in interest started shortly after the death of Pope Francis. Do you think it's just a passing fad, what we're seeing right now?
I don't. I think this spike was very important, that we saw the Google search metrics. This data gives us something concrete to point to, but we've been seeing a larger trend. And I began by talking about young people because that's certainly my experience in working as a college chaplain and running several apostolates that have many young listeners, many young participants active. In speaking with Dominican friars around the world who serve as university chaplains, this isn't just an American phenomenon. I think that's important to mention. But we're seeing a real trend here, a real movement of growth. The numbers, for example, of Catholics who were received into the church in the United States this past Easter were very heartening. There was excellent reporting here at EWTN about that. And this movement, I think, points to the great dissatisfaction that people have with what the world is offering today. They're looking for something real, something that they can ground their lives in. So I think the Google search trend, which was provoked and prompted certainly by the papal conclave and by the unity and beauty of the Catholic Church on display for the world, that certainly prompted that major upward trend at that one moment. But I think there are bigger things happening, quieter, more foundational questions being asked around the world today.
It's great news to hear. Of course, all of this begs the question, how does one become Catholic? If someone came up to you with that question, what would you tell them?
Friends, I think the temptation would be to say, well, we'll go to your parish church and enroll in an RCIA class. Now, that's true that the church does have structures for helping people to join, but I think we need to be even more fundamentally welcoming. We need to say, that's great. When someone says they're interested in the church, we need to affirm that interest.
Right.
And then we need to invite someone to get to know the church by saying, hey, well, you're interested in this. Why don't you join me for Sunday Mass? Building that habit of prayer, inviting people to a particular community where they can enter into the church's ritual, that's very important. You can propose to someone that they begin reading the catechism. These are the fundamentals of the faith. It's very accessible and will answer a lot of questions that people have. And then we can propose that people begin the formal process of becoming Catholic, which in many parishes will eventually be to join an RCIA, an OCIA program, as we're calling it now. But there may be other alternatives. Some priests, for example, are willing to offer private instruction. And so again, the point that I really want to underscore here, Mark, is that we should be docile to the movements of the Holy Spirit. We should be encouraging. We should give people resources that they can act on immediately, like coming to Mass, reading the catechism. And then we can propose from there conversations about how exactly that process will unfold for a particular individual.
Absolutely. Great words of wisdom, Father Briscoe. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.